lovely friends, how we doing today? Welcome back to Belle's Library. I'm Heather, and today I have a really fun, if you like this book, then you might like this video, so stick around and we'll get right into that. So if you are new here and you haven't yet subscribed, please take a moment and get down below, click that subscribe button. I also have my Goodreads and Instagram linked down below, so you can check me out over there. We can talk bookish on all of the different platforms. I would absolutely love that. So take a moment to do that, and let's go ahead and talk about this video. So if you haven't seen one of these before, I'm doing books with books. So I'm basically going to be talking about, if you like this certain book, then you might also want to check out this other book for whatever reason. That maybe they're kind of similar, or they have something that's like giving off some same type of vibes, whatever it might be. So we're going to be doing that. I do have them broken down, and I will have timestamps down below by some of the different genres we're going to be talking about. So the first section that we'll have is mystery, thriller / horror type books. We'll have a chunk there. Then we'll move into some fantasy and sci-fi type recommendations. And then the last category will be romance, contemporary type books that I have as well. Okay, so like I said, we're going to talk mystery thrillers and horror novels first. So I'm going to try and just tell you a book that's maybe a little bit more popular or well-known first, and then a book that kind of coincides with that. And the first book that I have on this list, I'm going to scooch this way so I can put some goodies up here, is In My Dreams I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead, I believe it is. This one has been really popular recently. It is a newer release, but it's been talked about a lot, I feel like, on BookTube lately, and I really enjoyed it. And we have this dark academia setting. We're following this group of friends, and they're getting back together for a reunion at their college. I think it's like a 10-year reunion or something. But back in their senior year when they were at college, one of their friends in their friend group actually got murdered. So now we're following this reunion and finding out a little bit more about what really happened. One of the friends back then was also accused of the murder, but never went to trial. They couldn't pin it on him. So we're following along and trying to figure out what really happened 10 years ago. The book that I think you might enjoy if you have read this and enjoyed it, actually I probably should have flipped these because I think the other one's a little more well-known, but it works either way, is The Guest List by Lucy Foley. And this one we're following this group of characters, and they're going out to this island for a wedding. And so you kind of have this isolated setting at the wedding, and somebody ends up dead. You don't know who it is at first, and so you're kind of following all these different all these different perspectives leading up to this person getting murdered. You don't know who got murdered. You don't know what's happening. So you're trying to figure out who got murdered, who did it, all these different things. But why I think these two, you might like one, you might like the other one, is because they do have multiple perspectives. So they have this kind of group of friends and people that you're following. And then you also have this kind of reuniting of these people. And then just, all this big cast of possible suspects and characters. And so you can kind of have a isolated island wedding vibe, and then also a dark academia isolated on this campus vibe, kind of this mystery with, a large cast. So I think that those two would go well together. My next recommendation, so these both I feel like also could probably go with, if you liked the In My Dreams I Hold a Knife, you probably could also enjoy both of these, but these are kind of their own thing as well. So if you liked They Never Learn by Lane Fargo, I think you would also enjoy For Your Own Good by Samantha Downing. Now, They Never Learn is this book that is about this woman who, she's basically a serial killer. She's a professor at this college, and she each year chooses the worst possible guy on campus and kills him. And so we're following from her perspective as she's planning her next kill. And then we have For Your Own Good. So we're following this professor there, and he is named like Teacher of the Year, and says that his wife is so proud of him, but people haven't really seen his wife for a while. And then one of the parents ends up dying, and it kind of is looking a little bit more like murder, but you know, he can't be bothered to kind of be enveloped in this, right? And it says, all he wants is for his colleagues and endless meddlesome parents to stay out of his way. It's really too bad that sometimes excellence can come at such a high cost. So basically, like, both of these stories were following these professors that their morals maybe are a little bit skewed and a little bit off. And they are definitely different stories and unique enough to where, like, if you read one, you're not going to be like, this is happening again in another story. They are different, unique stories. They have different things to talk about and kind of follow along with, but they do have that kind of academic setting and a teacher you're following that has kind of some different outlooks on life, let's just say. So this next recommendation I have for you starts with The Sundown Motel by Simone St. James. And this one, we're following the two different timelines, in which one of them we have this girl who is working at this sundown motel on the night shift, and some weird things start happening, and then she goes missing. And then the other timeline is like 20, 30 years later, and her niece decides to go out to this hotel. She's always kind of wondered what happened to her aunt, and she wants to go there and figure out what happened and try and find her. And so you're following these two different timelines, and you've got this kind of mystery thing going on, but also like a weird kind of haunting happening. And so that's The Sundown Motel. And then the other book that I think you would like if you've read this and enjoyed it, or vice versa, is Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. In this one, we are following a woman who basically, her dad dies and she inherits this old house that they lived in for like a few months when she was a kid, but they like left because it was apparently haunted, but she doesn't really remember anything because she was so young, and doesn't fully believe it, but her dad like wrote this book all about their experience and has always claimed that it's true. So she ends up going back to this house because she's going to renovate it to sell it. And so you're following two different timelines. Again, you're kind of following along actually with the book and the way the dad wrote this book about the house, but then also her timeline when she's back at the house and how things kind of parallel and seem to be happening the same. So I feel like that's where these two books are kind of similar. You have kind of this mystery element, but you also have a little bit of this kind of paranormal aspect in there, and you're following these two different timelines, and things are happening similarly in each of the timelines, and you're trying to figure out what's going on and what's real. And they kind of give some good haunted house or motel vibes. So I feel like these definitely match up well. So the next one that I have is The Invited by Jennifer McMahon. And this one, we're following this couple who buys this property and they're going to build a house on it. And the wife starts bringing in some historical items and then like starts seeing things, and there's some weird stuff happening on the property. And almost seems like somebody's trying to sabotage them building their house there. And then if you liked that one, I think you also might enjoy The Lost Village by Camilla Sten. This one, we're following this film crew who's going out to this old abandoned mining town one day, like in the past, like 50 years ago or something. Everybody just like disappeared out of this mining town. Like it was a bustling place, and then they were just all gone. And so they're going out there and they're going to look around and film and make a documentary on it and check things out. And so the reason I feel like these kind of fit together, and if you enjoyed one, you might like the other, is they both have these kind of historical horror type feels, and you're following a couple different timelines in each. So you're following a more historical timeline and then also the present day timeline in both of them. And I feel like they just have that similar vibe of having kind of that historical element, but they are a horror novel as well. So you might check out one if you liked the other. Now moving into a little bit more of a classic, but Shirley Jackson. If you enjoyed We Have Always Lived in the Castle, or I feel like possibly even The Haunting of Hill House, but I feel like specifically We Have Always Lived in the Castle, for whatever reason, just works better with this one. Then I think you might also enjoy What Big Teeth by Rose Zabo. So one of them obviously is a little bit more of an older classic. So if you're like wanting something a little bit more modern and today time that kind of is similar vibes to that, this other one just came out last year. And so We Have Always Lived in the Castle. We're following this family who, I think there's only 2 of them left, I believe. But they live up there, and then they are kind of shunned by the town. They always stay out there, and somebody's coming up to visit. It's been a little bit since I've read this one. But if you've read a Shirley Jackson, she has a certain way she writes. It's very much like this creepy, eerie atmosphere that she kind of builds up. Like, you know something's wrong, but it's not really being told to you right away, and you're just like, what is happening? And then in What Big Teeth, you kind of have the same kind of feeling. I feel like there's just like, you're following this family, and basically this girl, she's like a teen, she is sent away to boarding school for years and years, and then she ends up having to come home, and she comes home and she is kind of faced with her family and their monstrous side that she's really forgotten a lot about, and she's kind of got to face that. And she's also getting pulled in to kind of learning how to run this family estate and keep everybody safe and thriving and everything here. And so she's kind of learning to take over that piece of things as well. But I just feel like the atmosphere is kind of similar with this kind of like, something's off here, but I don't quite know what it is, and it's just creepy and weird. But this one's definitely a little bit more on the weird side. It is unusual and odd, but I thoroughly enjoyed it so much. So those are my suggestions there. This next one is actually middle grade horror, and I haven't read a ton of it, but I feel like I really am starting to enjoy the genre. So I've got Small Spaces by Catherine Arden. This is following this group of friends. Basically, the school class ends up going out to this farm, and the day before, one of the girls found the owner of this farm like crying at the river, and she was gonna like throw this diary into the river, and she stole the diary and is reading it, and it's all about like the past on this farm and things that happened that were kind of weird and creepy. And then they get to this farm and she's like, oh my gosh, you're this woman who was by the river that I stole your diary. And then some things kind of go sideways with some weird, creepy, smiley scarecrows. And then we have a Hide and Seeker, where we have this boy who like went missing, and now he's back. It's been like almost a year, and these friends are coming over to see him because they want to try and like welcome him home and see him. They missed him, right? But they start playing this game of hide and seek, and things go awry, and basically they all break rules in this game of hide and seek, and that is how this monster like basically takes them, is if they break rules, and they end up having to take on a big bad. So I feel like both of these, you have this middle grade horror novel with a big bad that these group of friends are trying to take on. I will say Hide and Seeker I really enjoyed. I felt like each of the characters kind of had their own struggles they were facing, and they kind of had to band together and deal with some of their own personal problems as well, and I thought that was really great, and I loved that representation in the book. But both of them were wonderful. I really enjoyed them, and I think that Catherine Arden does a good job of building up a really fun, creepy atmosphere in her book, where you're just like, oh my gosh, what's gonna happen? So really enjoy both of those. And then my last in this category is The Troop by Nick Cutter. So this book was not for me. If you've heard anybody talk about it, it is gross. It is gross, gross, gross. You're following this Boy Scout group, and they're like, you know, head person or whatever. They all go camping on this island, and then this guy like shows up, and he's just like, I need food, I'm hungry, and he's like wasting away, and he's creepy, and he's weird, and he's like eating like sand, and they're like, what is going on with this guy? Worms happen and things, and it just gets really gross, and it's really just like he's sick, and it spreads into the rest of the crew, and there's just anyways. It's gross. So the book I would recommend on the other side of this is actually a novella, and it is Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke. And this one we're following basically these two girls start talking, and one of them says, the one of them's struggling with money, and so the other one's like, hey, if you want to enter into a relationship and you do everything that I tell you to do, I will pay all your bills. I will send you money. I will finance your life basically, but you have to do everything I say, no questions asked. And it just gets gross. Oh my gosh, it's so gross. So I feel like if you like kind of that gross horror type stuff, you might like one or the other if you haven't read it yet. I've learned that is not for me, but if you do, because I know a lot of people out there do, and that is totally fine, but it just wasn't for me. There you go. There's your recommendation. Okay, so now we are going to go ahead and move into the science fiction fantasy section here. And my first recommendation is, if you liked The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern, I think you might also like The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden. So both of these reads are so atmospheric, and it is probably one of my favorite parts about it is you can just like imagine being in these places, and just like the imagery that comes to your mind is just impeccable. So The Night Circus, we're following the circus that just pops up in town, doesn't let them know they're coming, and then they're just there. And we're following these two magicians, and they don't know who each other is within the circus, but they're both putting on these different acts and making these new shows, and they are secretly competing, and just, oh my gosh, it is so, so good. It is one of my all-time favorite books, and is just so creative and amazing. Anyways, and then we have The Bear and the Nightingale, which we're following in like Russia. It's freezing cold winter. So we're following Vasilisa, and she is a young kid, and as she gets older, her mom unfortunately died during childbirth, and so her dad decides to go out and look for a new wife because he feels like she needs a mother. And this new stepmom that comes home does not believe in the old household spirits that they've always kind of left offerings out for. And but Vasilisa can see these creatures, and they're, in the stove, in the oven, and in the stables, and they help around the house. So she's trying to like leave offerings out, but her whole town has kind of stopped and moved away from doing that. And basically that's allowing some of these other more evil forces to kind of come in and start invading. But the reason I feel like these are very different stories, they're different kind of fantasy, but at the same time, they just have that beautiful writing. It's very atmospheric, and just like in The Bear and the Nightingale, you can just like feel this freezing coldness, and you're like huddled around this stove, and it's just, oh my gosh, yeah. If you liked one, I think you would like the other. So I would recommend checking it out. My next recommendation is for Under the Whispering Door by T.J. Klune. So in this one, we are following this man, and he has a heart attack and he dies. And this Reaper basically comes and brings him to this tea shop, and like they're there to help him kind of get ready to pass along to the other side. But Wallace in his life wasn't exactly the best person, and so he's not ready to go. And so he's given some time to basically try and figure out how to make himself feel better about things and do some of the things that he didn't do in his life. And so we're kind of following him, and then also Hugo, who owns the tea shop, as he's helping him along. And the book that I think, if you liked this one, you might also like this one, is A Psalm for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. Now, that other one's a little bit more of a fantasy book. This one is a sci-fi book in which we're following a monk, and he's a tea monk, and he goes around to these different villages and basically serves people tea and lets them either just, they need a place to just have some tea and take a break, or they need to talk to him or whatever. He travels around, and he kind of is getting a little, like, he feels like he's a little stagnant and he's supposed to be doing something else. And one day he takes off and goes out into the wilderness, and robots years ago just became sentient and decided that they didn't want to live with the humans. They wanted to go create their own life, and they went out into the wilderness. And so they come back, and one of them specifically is checking in with the humans to see what they need. And so he runs into this monk, and so the two of them are kind of on a journey together, learning from each other. And I feel like between these two stories, you've got kind of this fantasy sci-fi element, but written with beauty and hope and happiness, and just, it's a little more of a heartwarming story. The way that each of these authors writes is more of a heartwarming fantasy sci-fi versus like more of a action, shoot 'em up, kill 'em. You know, not that fantasy is exactly like that, but it's not like that epic fantasy, lots of death type stuff. It's more of a heartwarming type of a story, and I just feel like if you liked one, you'd probably like the other, so you should check them out. I also have kind of a weird suggestion with Under the Whispering Door. For whatever reason, when I was reading that book, I really got a lot of vibes of A Christmas Carol. I haven't read the book, but I feel like you could read it like around Christmas time, and it kind of gives you a Christmas Carol vibes because of that idea of somebody who just wasn't great in life, and they're kind of learning from that after death kind of thing. So just throwing that out there. So this next one is kind of, it's a sci-fi book, but anyways, I'll suggest it and you'll see. It doesn't fully fall into this category, but it does fall into this category. So if you enjoyed Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, I think you would also enjoy The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. Now, Project Hail Mary is a sci-fi book. We're following this man. He wakes up on a spaceship. He doesn't remember anything. His companions are dead, and he is trying to piece together why he's on the spaceship, what his mission is, and how to complete it. And so we're following his journey. And then we have The Love Hypothesis, which is a romance book in which we are following a PhD student. She is there for science, and she tells her best friend that she's over her ex, and because she can see that the other two have so much chemistry, and she barely knows this guy, but the best friend doesn't want to, you know, break any girl codes, right? And so she's like, no, I'm already dating somebody else. I'm out on a date. And then she sees her best friend like coming around the corner at the university, and she's like, shoot, I'm supposed to be out and about. So she kisses the first guy that she sees, and it happens to be one of the professors for one of the PhD programs. Not her professor, so there's no like weird dynamics there. But then they end up entering into this kind of fake dating relationship. The reason why I'm saying this is I feel like if you enjoy sci-fi, fantasy type stuff, and you want to try out some different romances, I think this one may work for you because it does have that little bit more scientific side to it. And so you are getting a romance, but you also have some science-y elements in there as well. And I think it could really work for you. Also, the other way around, if you are more of a romance reader and you enjoyed The Love Hypothesis and you want a sci-fi, I feel like Project Hail Mary and the way that Andy Weir writes is very accessible and it would work for you. He has a way of making sciencey stuff work. Like, even if you didn't understand it, he kind of adds in humor to just kind of lighten the mood, and you're just like, okay. Otherwise, I feel like he kind of makes it fun, and it's not like a grueling task to get through his book in any way. It is still enjoyable, so kind of works either way. And the last book in this category that I'm going to be talking about is Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. This one, we have this kid, and basically, like, this virtual reality world is created. Everybody pretty much like plugs into and lives in this world, that you can make money in this world, you can work in this world, like all these different things. And the creator of this passed away, and he left an Easter egg in the game, and he said, whoever ends up finding it basically gets to own my entire empire and game and everything. So some new clues start coming out, and we're following this kid as he's trying to find this Easter egg. And there's a ton of fun pop culture, like 80s references within the game, and you're mostly following him in the game as he's trying to navigate some of this stuff, but you're also having some real world stuff where he has to kind of unplug and deal with this and that. And it definitely gets very serious because people want this, and it's a lot of money, and people will do anything to make it happen. And then we have my recommendation with this is Slay by Brittany Morris. This is another one where I'm not staying within the same genre. Slay is kind of sci-fi, but it is, I feel like, much more contemporary with a mix of a sci-fi element into it. We're following this girl who created a whole virtual reality world in which Black people can come and be themselves within it and play in this game and like have this community. And she is still in high school, and one of the players ends up killing another player in real life over the game, and everybody is freaking out saying that she's racist for making a game that's only for Black people, and that she needs to come out and basically say something because this was her fault, and she doesn't know what to do. She's never told her parents. She hasn't told anyone that she is the creator of this game. And so she's kind of dealing with the reactions of all the different people in her life, and also just how to deal with this and what to do and whatnot. So I think like both of these have a really cool video game element to them, and I really enjoyed the way that both the video games were built, and you could really like see and feel like the way these video games worked, if that makes sense. And they were detailed and well crafted. But then like also if you want something a little more sci-fi video game heavy, or over here if you want something a little more got a contemporary story and a video game element, you've got Slay. So they could work for you if you want something in a little different genre. So that's my suggestion there. So our last category is the romance and contemporary area here. And I've got 5 more and then we're gonna be done. So we've got The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. It's a beautiful story about Xiomara, who is trying to find her voice, and she is very good at poetry, and she gets invited by one of her teachers to join the Slam Poetry Club. But her mom wants her to have nothing to do with it. She wants her to be involved with the church and some church programs and stuff like that. But Xiomara really wants to find her own way and have her own voice be heard. So that's kind of the storyline we're following there. So I think if you enjoyed that one, I think you also could enjoy Slay, because I think both of these are looking at these 2 young ladies, and they're trying to find their way in the world, and just kind of dealing with some different prejudices and struggling with some of that, but also both each have their own strong voice, and they want to kind of have an impact in the world in a certain way. And I just think that they are different stories, but I think you could enjoy one if you enjoyed the other. Apparently, we're going to talk a lot about Brittany Morris. I just wrote her in here quite a bit, but this one was just kind of an author. If you like one author, you might like the other author. I put Brittany Morris and Angie Thomas. I feel like both of these authors do an amazing job of mixing this entertaining contemporary story with some really hard-hitting social topics around racism. I think they both do an amazing job with that. So highly recommend both of their books. Like both these authors, their books are amazing. So I will kind of put some of their books here and just check all of these out. My next suggestion is if you liked Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens, in which we are following a young girl, and basically she has to kind of learn to survive after her mom leaves her, and it's just her dad who really isn't present, and he eventually ends up leaving as well, and she is kind of trying to figure out how to survive out here and on this marsh, and everybody calls her Marsh Girl, and she's kind of cut off a lot of ways by the community. But also we have this kind of murder mystery element being woven in because this guy ends up dying kind of nearby where she is, and people are kind of trying to blame her for it. And so we've got this historical setting. I believe it's in the 1970s mostly, but you're getting some flashbacks. And her kind of dealing with coming of age in a very unusual setting. And then I think that if you liked that, you also might like Last Night at the Telegraph Club. We are also following a historical timeline. It might have been like the 60s, 50s, sometime in there. And we're following these 2 girls that go to the Telegraph Club, and the Telegraph Club is for women to meet each other. And that is very scary thing to do in that time and not exactly accepted. And we're following basically both of these, I feel like have quite a coming of age element, but also they're kind of this historical, groundbreaking, we're talking about some social issues type stuff going on within each of them. So I think they would work. If you liked one, you would like the other. And this last one is more on the romance side of it. It's my only like really romancy one. A lot of these others were more contemporary, but I read the last of the Brown sisters, Act Your Age, Eve Brown, recently, and adored it. It was so cute. We're following kind of this grump and sunshine trope where we have Eve. She is basically going to be cut off by her parents with her trust fund because they want her to find a job and stick with it. She just kind of flits around to different things, but hasn't really like settled on anything. So they said, you need to hold something down for 6 months, I think it is, or something. And so she's upset and she goes on a drive and she gets out to this inn and she sees that they're hiring for a chef. So she goes in to interview and she meets the inn's owner, Jacob, and Jacob is totally the opposite of Eve. Eve is like chaos all over the place, bubbly, colorful, and Jacob is very straight-laced, in his button-up, like follows the rules kind of a person. And the two of them, he's just like, no, you're not going to work here at all. What is going on? But as she's leaving, she accidentally hits him with her car and kind of gets sucked into helping him more around the inn. And then romance ensues. And it was so cute, so funny. Loved it. Now, if you like that one, I think you would also like People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. Oh, this one was just stinking adorable as well. You also have a little bit of some grump and sunshine going on in there. I feel like you have kind of that similar humor and banter between the two stories. In this one, we are following Poppy, and each summer, her and her best friend take a trip to somewhere. They go on a vacation together, and they haven't gone for a couple of years because something happened and they stopped talking. And so she ends up reaching out and saying, hey, do you want to do one more trip with me? And so they're kind of getting back together. So you're following the different summers leading up to the summer where they stopped talking. So you get some chapters from that, but then you also get chapters from their current vacation and how that is going and what's changed in the last couple of years for them. And it was really fun. Poppy is very much that sunshine in a bag, happy-go-lucky kind of person. But then we have what is his name? Our male main character. He is just a little bit more of the kind of grumpy, like, he's going along with everything she's doing, but like, a little bit more like I could sit and read a book in this bar instead kind of a character. So yeah, really enjoyed both of these. And I feel like if you liked one, you would like the other. So check both of them out. And that is it. That is all of the recommendations I have for you guys. I probably should have split this into 2 videos because it is really long, but hopefully the timestamps helped. And I will talk to you guys really soon. You guys have a wonderful day. Bye.